All right, everyone, we're back. I should say we're back in black. No, I shouldn't. Bad dad joke. Take two. Okay, anyway, we're back with a bad tab video. And this is one of those books that I got way early on when I started playing guitar. And it's kind of funny because there aren't a ton of mistakes in this book like there are in the other books that we've covered. But the mistakes that they did make were so big that they affected me throughout many decades. And I even taught many of these classic riffs incorrectly because of this book. So all in all, like I said, it's decent. You know, a lot of the solos are spot on or they're really close. But the mistakes they made were really big, and it's in particular 3 of the most classic riffs of all time are the ones that they messed up on. And then there's a couple details that kind of bother me about the book. We'll talk about those as well. All right, so today the page holder is going to be my enhancer pedal. The infamous Boss pedal that people always ask, does it actually do anything? I think they used to give these away for free if you bought like a gig bag back in the day or something, but anyway, maybe I'll do a video on this someday, but that's going to be the page holder of the day. Such a cool cover. I love the way this has the red strip over the top. These are my favorite colors, by the way, red, white, and black, if you couldn't tell. Some really cool vintage pictures in the beginning, especially of Angus there. Love it. Okay, so first I'm going to tell you about one of those things that kind of annoy me. It's a small detail, but it's kind of a big deal in the overall scope of guitar playing. For some reason in this book, it's a common theme. They forgot to put the quarter bends in a lot of the rhythm section parts. And that's a huge part of the signature sound of AC/DC. So if you ever watch Angus or Malcolm play, they like to do these little tiny quarter bends that really bring the sound to life. It gives it more emotion. So if you play, for example, Giving the Dog a Bone without the quarter bend, it'll sound like this. So the tabs is just to play a straight C note. But if you listen to the actual song, there's a tiny little quarter bend that gives it a little bit more spark. Now, some people might think I'm nitpicking for that one song, but it keeps happening. Let's go to the next example of it. Okay, Have a Drink on Me. Now, the way they have it written is like this. Sounds okay, right? But listen what happens if you add the quarter bend in. Has a lot more feel to it, a lot more life, and I had to actually figure that out on my own over time to give it a little bit of that shake. Versus just the straight version like they have. See how lame that sounds compared to it? Okay, it's really apparent in Shake a Leg, so they say to just go straight G right there. Give it a little bit of that quarter bend. And it's really apparent on the next part. They actually, instead of saying take the G and bend it slightly, they actually have us just playing the G sharp instead. So it sounds really flat. So they say to go. Instead of giving it that little quarter bend on the G. All right, now let's move on to the iconic riffs that they messed up on that affected me for most of my guitar career, starting with Back in Black. Oh, that's a badass picture. I might actually take that out and frame it. Okay, this one might not seem like a big deal, but if you watch Angus play it live, you can see his hands actually doing something other than what they say to do. So the book says, now, if you're one of my former students, you might say, well, Mike, that's how you taught me. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Because I learned it out of this book originally, that's how I thought it was played. The end is actually supposed to be like this. A lot of people might say, well, that's a big stretch to have to jump from the 2nd fret to the 7th fret, but that's what they do. If you watch them, they're jumping like that. Just watch a live clip of that. In particular, the last part sounds better doing it the real way because you get 2 different places to play the B note. Even though it's the same note, it changes the sound versus just playing the 7th fret twice. Sounds a little bit different. Now what's funny is the riff later on in the song, the book actually transcribes it a lot closer. So they say to go. Now you'd think because they figured that out for the later part, they would have said, oh, maybe the beginning's like that too, but they didn't bother changing it. They just kept it the other way. Okay, I would have saved this one for last because it seems like the worst one, the one that messed me up the most, but it's not the song that I played the most live incorrectly. This is just one that I kind of played on my own and with friends maybe, just jamming in my basement or whatever. But this one is so crazy how different it is from the actual version that it's kind of mind-boggling. So they have it all in open position for Hell's Bells. And watch my hand real quick. I'm just gonna hold these chord shapes and try to arpeggiate correctly. Next part. Now, it sounds okay, right? That's why I was convinced it was correct back in the day. But then I realized there's a much easier way to play it, and it's kind of funny. The easier way is the actual way to do it. So if you just play it up here at the 7th position, watch how little you have to move and how much thicker it sounds. Isn't that crazy? I just had to slide a little bit. So much more authentic feeling and sounding, and I love playing it that way. It's so much easier. Now, just as a side note, they messed up the next part in the book. They say to go. So the second phrase sounds a little bit off. Here's the first phrase. Second phrase, they say. It's not so far off that like people in the crowd will start getting up and leaving if you play it that way. But if you play it the correct way, it feels better and it sounds better like usual. So instead of going, you just have to go. Okay, now the worst offender, at least in my life, because I've had to play this live quite a bit. And in the book, they say to play it all down here at the 3rd fret. And this is really bizarre sounding. Let me just play what they say. You see how strangely difficult that was? A lot of these weird switches to like the D chord all of a sudden from the G. It just feels really unnatural, and that's how I played it for a long time. Now let's play it closer to what he actually does. You'll find you have to go all the way up to the 7th position, but it's completely worth it. There's so much power to that. I feel like I could really hit those chords strong. And then there's that little bend again. Versus so much different, huh? See how that's the most glaring example of it being tabbed wrong and basically throwing me off for decades on that one. Here's a funny anomaly that used to happen in a lot of tab books, and this one had it as well. It might just be the copies that I had, but this entire line is pretty much blank on the top line. So sometimes you'd have a printing problem when it came to tab, and all of a sudden things were just erased and there was nothing you could do about it.
You've just been erased.
A lot of people try to make you feel bad and say, well, if you needed tab books back in the day, you're not very talented or you're not a real guitar player. That's all crap. When you start out, you need a place to start, and these books were a great resource for us back then. We didn't have the internet, so this was kind of our gospel, when it came to learning guitar from bands and songs. All right, everyone, so that was the AC/DC Back in Black tab book. Like I said, really just 3 big problems. It doesn't seem like much, but they were big deals to me because they were in such influential and legendary riffs. So let me know if you tried to learn from this book, if you had the same experiences as I did, and I guess we'll catch you at the next lesson. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.